Hello and welcome to Pilot Wars, the show where we take two pilots from television history and we pit them together in a battle for the ages. In this corner, we have Keith, and in this corner we have Dan. Also in this corner we have How I Met Your Mother, and in this corner we have Lovesick. So those are the two shows.
4.
So what we do here in Pilot Wars, we take pilots that we find there's something similar going on here. They're percolating with similar flavors. And the reason why I think that How I Met Your Mother, classic CBS sitcom of the 2005 era, is similar
Tell me some more things about it.
It was a CBS sitcom of the 2005 era. And it was similar to Lovesick, Netflix comedy of the 2014 era, but also a British show of the 2014 era. There's... Holy fuck.
I think that was the bottle over there.
I think it was.
So damn. Pilot Wars.
Yes. Basically, they're similar because they both revolve around love, sort of, to use the title of lovesick individuals, white men who just want to find love,
Sort of a dopey main character.
Yes.
Who's just looking for a connection.
Yes. And similar in that they both they're like romantic comedies, but they do things in a sort of, more like...
irreverent.
Yeah, but also like a mysterious way where there's twists and turns.
The time frame, the fact that there's a setup is there's a skeleton to the whole story and we're jumping back and forth in time. Yeah,
it's not just about... It's about playing with your audience's expectations and, giving hints of what the finale will be, but not, but giving them swerves throughout the time. We have the similarities between Dylan and Ted, but we also have Luke and Barney. So there's various archetypes that sort of...
Right. And so I think another thing we can just kind of jump to the ends. So there's a reveal at the end of both pilots. So in How I Met Your Mother, which was, and that's how I met your Aunt Robin.
Yeah.
And then you get the name drop at the end of Lovesick, which is Abigail, was it?
Yeah.
So,
but I'd also say that in some ways the sort of twist of Lovesick is that near the end of Lovesick, in the timeline that you've mainly been watching, you see Evie being a little sort of lovesick for Dylan, and then you cut back to present time, and Dylan's a little lovesick for Evie, and sort of showing how did that progress, and we know there's a 3-year gap there, and the show is all about playing with those expectations. And so I do want to also throw out, so we both watched How I Met Your Mother basically when it was there, and
I was on a little bit, I had watched it in high school, but not heavily. I watched it mostly in college. So when I watch How I Met Your Mother, I'm thinking of 1 o'clock in the morning, Domino's pizza covered in hot sauce over a laptop.
Quality times. Yeah, there's nostalgia there for sure. Lovesick, you've never seen until now. You've only seen the pilot.
Correct.
I've seen all of it up to season 3 where it is right now. But we're really talking about how do these shows... The pilots are about introducing the characters, introducing the premise and the tone, and I don't even, they're so different in a lot of ways, but do you want to start with one of them and then move the other and then compare them? Or
Yeah, so let's start with How I Met Your Mother, because that is the one that first came out and the one that first captured our hearts.
Whoa!
So.
What did you feel watching it now for the first time in a while?
The age of it did become apparent, not only in the quality of the film, but some of it was a little cornier than I remembered.
Yeah.
The first half of the episode anyways. I think the second half still stood up tall, but
the thing is, I think that there is a sort of, especially in the pilot, I think there is a sort of saccharine quality that they're going for. But it's also, I think, whenever I watch 3-camera sitcoms with, I know they didn't have a laugh track in the traditional sense, but it's still that sort of format. I feel like you need to watch a few episodes to get past the format sometimes, because it just automatically feels aged to me.
I agree with that, but I think that it's just a few writing things were just a little lazy.
Yeah.
And the acting was a little off.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's just because they weren't like in the characters yet.
Yeah.
Because I mean, these people played the characters for a long time.
Yeah.
And you could see them like fall into it very easily. I think it was a little before they had that comfort zone.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I don't know. It wasn't terrible, but the first half was like, oh, this is how it was. The second half it fell into its own.
Well, I think there are things where you could tell them trying to make things a thing, right? So, like, you could tell they wanted Barney to be a standout.
They were trying really hard with Barney.
Yeah, they were trying really hard. And the thing is, I think that they succeeded on a number of jokes. It's just that they had so many.
Right.
Where it's like, I think that, honestly, and there's a reason Suit Up is iconic from that show. And I think especially, like, when he's like, you're beautiful bastard, you finally suited up, they're just going on my blog. Like, I think that does work.
Yeah.
There are other things that I think work less, and I think it also, Barney as a character, maybe not specifically in the pilot, but in general, would have had a lot harder of a time existing in the modern landscape.
Right, definitely.
Yeah.
He was the only villain.
Yeah. And that's interesting too. I mean, he's, I don't know, like, he's so womanizing, but the thing is, in this pilot, he's a womanizer, but he's not, like, horrendous. You don't have the whole thing of him, like, lying and tricking people and all that stuff. Yeah,
like, you're like, okay, he's sort of like an asshole, but he hasn't done anything wrong on camera.
Yeah. You know? Yeah, it's more just, like, his attitude, and it's all, but it's also, like, you can also see with little things like the laser tag and stuff that he's, like, he's also just trying really hard in general, right?
Right.
So I do think there's a little bit of complexity there that I appreciate. Do you think that Marshall and Lily sort of gelled in this first episode, or did it take...
Yeah, you know, see, that is one of the weaker links, I think, is obviously there's some good jokes in there and the whole, like, eye patch and all that, but their chemistry was really not there yet.
Yeah.
And, like, I think that Ted is Josh Radnor, right?
Yeah.
He was the best of the second half, and you could tell he was sort of a standout.
Yeah.
But I gotta say, Jason Segel,
I know,
who was like probably the most prolific, was kind of the cringiest one.
Yeah, I don't think that he's definitely not one of the highlights. I don't think, and I actually, for me, Robin is a little wooden. Like, he's not bad,
but she's just the pixie girl.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There's nothing really to make you care about her other than the fact that Ted wants her. Mm-hmm. She's not like, you know, you wouldn't fall in love with her character from this.
No, there are still some good jokes, like the whole, like, olives and all that.
Yeah.
So it's not like she's a bad character. Yeah. She's just not, like you said, she's not like the heartthrob.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, we want to talk about, let's jump ahead a little bit. Victoria.
Yeah.
Let's not go too ahead, but that was a good arc.
Yes, that was
the first part. Though.
Yes, when they first did it. Yes. Yeah, totally. And I think the thing about How I Met Your Mother that I am impressed with is how much, you know, now that we've seen more of the show, how much they did capture in that very first episode so much of what made that show work going forward. Mm-hmm. That we had things like the olive theory, where the theories and all of those, like, ideas, like those like rules that they had was like such a core piece of what made that show its own identity.
And
right?
It's like the weird, immature scheming mixed with sort of like the overly mature, like, dad awkwardness.
Yeah.
You know, so you have like the blue French horn, all these like the olive theory, or like just like the contrivances.
Yeah,
right? Now that's a big part of it.
Yeah, and I think that was. I think that it appealed to me, especially when I was younger, the fact that it was over the top, that it was like he's gonna do these crazy things, and it was sort of...
He was a knight.
Yeah. And the thing is, and that it worked that he was him, but everybody else was like, oh God, Ted, what are you doing? And I think that definitely was solid. But there is just something innately sort of cringy to this pilot, I feel like, But overall, it's not bad.
Yeah.
Lovesick?
Lovesick.
Yeah. So this is your first impression of the show. What did you think?
I liked it. I mean, first right off the bat, let's just say it felt a lot longer.
Yeah.
I don't know what it was, but it felt more like an hour-long pilot somehow.
Yeah. And it's only a few minutes longer than How I Met Your Mother. I think that what it comes down to is it is... You know, in some ways it is an unfair comparison between these two shows, even though they're similar in a lot of ways, because on the one hand, we have, this classic American sitcom style, and then not only do we have the British style, but it's also just way more drama. Or just like, I don't know, there is a lot of comedy, but it's like...
The characters, I think, were more interwoven.
Yeah.
Like, we didn't move around location that much, but we moved around characters pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So, like, we would only have, like, a couple minutes with each character or set, but it would keep changing very rapidly. So I think that's what made it take longer.
Yeah, I think that there was more, in some ways, a more complex number of things happening, occurring. Because, think about, like, you could have had the whole episode just be about Dylan, his girlfriend breaking up with him at the wedding, and then, but on top of that, you had the vicar, and you had Abigail, and you had the stuff with Angus, and you reveal that Evie has feelings for Dylan. Like, there's a lot of moving parts going on.
It's a lot of things that just open up.
Yeah, it's like, instead of just sort of, they kind of get you to know these characters by showing them doing stuff, as opposed to just sort of, like, slowly introducing them.
Right.
What did you think of these characters?
I would say, and I think this is the cultural thing as well, none of the characters are particularly likable.
Yeah.
And that's kind of part of that attitude, where it's more about, like, the scenario and the humors in that, as opposed to, like, you getting attached to a character specifically, and then things are happening to them.
Yeah.
Except for Dylan, the main character.
Yeah.
I mean... You kinda, Evie also, yes, but you kinda
she doesn't have a ton in the first episode.
You kinda just hate everybody.
Well, the thing, I think it was, as someone who's seen more of the show, I think in some ways it was an odd choice to spend so much time on Angus and his wife. Like, obviously it's the conceit of the episode that they're at the wedding, and in some ways I think that is really interesting because we have How I Met Your Mother with the engagement, and that this whole thing of, it's a backdrop of what's affecting the main character is the idea of their friends moving forward in life. But in some ways, yes, Angus is one of the four pillars of the show, but he's in some ways, I would say, the lowest of the pillars. So, like, and obviously, I think his wife and Angus in this episode, I would say, are straight up unlikable. Whereas, like, Angus becomes more likable, his wife is not as big of a deal as they make her seem like in this episode. And so, in some ways, I'm like, you really should have been spending more time on Evie, more time on showing complexities of Luke. Because I think Dylan, Evie, actually, I think all four, Dylan, Evie, Angus, and Luke all become likable in their own way throughout the series.
Because, I liked the pilot, I would want to see episode 2. But at this point, it's like everybody is kind of a jerk and or an idiot.
Yeah.
Except for Evie, which we just kind of see like, oh, she's the photographer girl.
Yeah.
She's kind of cute and cool.
Yeah.
And then Dylan, like, oh, he's a sweetheart but a numbskull.
Yeah.
And that's it. Everyone's just like, well, they're all assholes.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
But.
Well, and the thing is, I think it's interesting to me because I watched the pilot of Lovesick and I'm like, I just innately feel like it's a better pilot than How I Met Your Mother.
It is a little more solid, definitely.
But at the same time, like, I don't think that necessarily the humor was better, it's just different. And I don't know that there would be as many, like, standout memorable, like, there's nothing on the level of Suit Up, right? Like, that is, like, a memorable thing. Like, I didn't even necessarily remember everything that happened in this pilot, whereas I remember a lot more of what happened in How I Met Your Mother.
Yeah, it's the catch-22, so How I Met Your Mother felt quicker, but there are more isolated moments that stand out, because we're going to more different places and the characters are a little bit more likable. It's a very catchphrasey type of thing, even though we didn't get all the catchphrases. In Lovesick, it's sort of a steady state, so it's not quite as dynamic. So it's always like turned up to about like 8 at all times. And so because of that, it has that certain type of humor, but you're not saying like, oh, remember that moment? You know, with the exception of maybe like, oh, the vicar kissing him on the cheek or something. But like,
no,
like
I think the thing is that for me, I feel more in it in Lovesick. Like, it feels more like life to me. And I don't know if that's cinematography is a big part of that for sure. But I also think, like, maybe even partially the fact that the characters are kind of dicks. It makes it feel more lived in, and in some ways it's also like American sitcoms are so much based on setup, punchline setup, all that stuff, and this was more like they said some funny things, right? It wasn't like every line was to set up another line that would make you laugh.
Can we talk about the main character's hair looking exactly like Mark Hamill's hair?
Yes.
Because that's a thing.
It is a thing.
Like, exactly like it. Classic Star Wars hairstyle.
Yeah.
And the other guy, Luke,
He's very familiar looking.
he looks so familiar. I mean, he must look like somebody else from a movie or something.
Yeah.
He looks so familiar to me. We didn't seem like it online looking it up.
Yeah. Well, so what did you think of Luke? I mean, and also, like, in comparison to Barney, because obviously there's similar archetypes.
I mean, knowing the character of Barney so well, I just feel like I know what they're doing and where they're going.
Exactly.
And it's just like, it's Diet Barney.
Yeah.
You know, that's all. I mean, but okay. I mean, it's not like it's that original of an archetype.
Yeah, no, definitely
But the shows are so similar in that setup. I'm just like, well, here's this character again.
Yeah.
Except maybe slightly less lovably portrayed.
Yeah. Well, so the thing is, it's hard for me, again, knowing where things are going. But for me, ultimately, where we go with his character, he is way, way better than Barney, in my opinion. But it's also it's a complicated thing, because I don't know that I would ever say he's as funny as Barney at his best, but he is way more deep than Barney when they delve into who he is as a person. And, like, obviously they tried to give Barney some complexity over the years, and they gave him this backstories.
That was afterthought.
Yeah, and it was also, like, they'd have an episode here and there, and then he'd go right back to being the crazy person, right? Whereas I feel like there's like real depth to Luke as a character, and
though I have to stop you.
Yeah.
I think as a cheat and as an out, they didn't How I Met Your Mother. There's something very beautiful about the fact that sort of the theme is in How I Met Your Mother is how many times do we have to learn the same lesson over and over again, and that kind of makes it more real in some ways, especially with how it lands in Barney's. Like the finality of, like, you're not able to escape it. You know, like every time you think you break above, and just kind of like sucks you back down into going through the motions. I think that is weirdly poignant. I don't know how intentional that is or not, but I think that is there.
Yeah, no, that's certainly something. I also think for me, it's, like I said, Barney is such a hard character in the modern world, where I'm like, okay, yes, you know, Luke is a womanizer, but, like, at least not, like, to the nth degree, whereas Barney's, like, literally making... I think the part of the problem isn't even just Barney, it's how the show portrays women around Barney. Right. You know, and so...
I mean, because they are literally his props.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
And the playbook and all that. It's like... It's the structure around it is as much as the joke as any of the jokes. Yeah. And so it becomes... fast-tracked to being okay.
Yeah. And the thing is, I think part of what makes the show a British show is that Luke doesn't always succeed the way Barney, like, almost always succeeds. Like, people might be dicks in these British shows, but they usually don't succeed because of that. And in general, most people don't succeed. You know, you end this episode, and nobody's really that happy. At least in the current timeline. Like, yes, Dylan ends up having sex with Abigail, but it's still, like, it's not like he got the girl, you know, like...
And then it's a very American thing. It's sort of like that kind of hopefulness. Yeah. It's like, you're always going to have that Hollywood sugarcoat of, like, it's the dream girl, it's the, you know, she's the one, or it's going to work someday, or, you know, even if there are setbacks or failures, there's that, not saccharine, but... It's just like it's about the feel good, more than it is about the poetry of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to say that though in this pilot of How I Met Your Mother, where he doesn't actually kiss the girl, and we find out on top of that it's Aunt Robin. So like, it's certainly
but
there were
it's
things
done so playfully, and there's so much hope left in it.
Yeah. Well, because also he met the mother.
Yeah. It's not as I mean, just like the setup. The setup is we're married to somebody. Yeah. Here's the story, children. As opposed to, hey, I have STDs. I have to go through my book. So like that alone is kind of like telling, right?
Yeah. I wonder if we should have like set up what happened in the pilots.
No.
STDs, guys.
Well, okay. Let's.
I mean, at this point, they either know or they don't know. I do want to also mention that How I Met Your Mother did do some sort of playful stylistic things that were innovative for sitcom. That's actually a 3-camera sitcom. That they did do the stuff where they would have like split screen, that they had one of my favorite jokes actually is Ranjit, is him appearing from behind. Like that's a visual comedic thing that a lot of three-camera sitcoms don't do, and I know that
because of the limitations of the angles.
Yeah, and I know that How I Met Your Mother was unique in that they would a lot of times have a live studio audience watch the recorded thing because they cut back and forth so much.
Right.
And even the way that they were cutting between scenes so quickly was pretty unique at the time.
Not groundbreaking,
but definitely
certainly well handled.
Yeah. What else? I mean, ultimately, how are you left feeling?
Give me a little more specific question than that.
Okay, well, like ultimately, if you had to recommend someone just watch one of these pilots, and maybe never watch anything else from these shows again, just watch the pilots, which pilot would you suggest they watch?
Depends on the person.
Yeah.
I think that technically, as a finished project, the Lovesick pilot is better.
Yeah.
But I think we're cutting through a little bit of nostalgia here.
Yeah.
But I do think there's that sort of like charm to the How I Met Your Mother we were discussing when we were watching it. That even if it's corny, even if it's cheesy, it has that sort of like Wonder Years kind of like, it's that like hokey, like you use the word hokey.
Yeah.
But it's you have a connection to the characters, you care where they're going to go. Whereas and again, it is cultural as well. When you see a Dylan, like you recognize him as like the hero, but like I don't really care about him per se.
Yeah.
I care more about the world as a whole and all the moving pieces.
Yeah, I get that. I think the other thing that I think is worthwhile is mentioning how much more accessible How I Met Your Mother is, especially in this pilot. Like I think that I could way more easily recommend that pilot to a larger amount of people, whereas I know there are people who are going to be turned off by watching Lovesick, that are, especially when it starts right off with the STD stuff, and when you have some very unlikable characters involved. And I'm sure there are people who are like, would never even get past the fact that Angus kissed Evie in this episode, and are like, he's a dick forever now. Like, so yeah, I think it depends on the person, but for me, I don't know. I think that Lovesick just feels like a better product.
Yeah, and it's not. Is it the story or is it the cinematography? I don't know.
It hurts it's hard. It makes it hard to compare.
Yeah.
Because they're in such different levels, right? And it's not cinematography, production values, all that stuff. Was there any? Can you think of any like comedic moments that stood out to you in Lovesick?
Like, I mean, that's what we were saying,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Is that I can think of moments. I don't know if they were particularly high moments.
Yeah.
It's more, again, like I said, it's the moving parts of the machine of the scenario which are intriguing.
Yeah, it's the scenario and it's the awkwardness, which is what drives a lot of the comedy versus lines. It's not necessarily, oh, he just said a funny thing,
Right, like, so the blue French horn is like a bold thing that a character does that you can empathize with.
Yeah.
In this show, it's like, well, he got dumped in the wedding, which is, ironic. It's funny, but it's not like there's no like zinger.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah. So it really different strokes for different folks.
I just thought of one.
Oh.
I can't go back to my hotel room because of my ex-girlfriend.
Yeah.
that was a second.
Yeah, and then him like slowly walking around the table.
Right.
Going,
so that was a good. That was a good setup and all that.
Yeah. All right. Any last words?
Aardvark.
Okay. Thank you guys so much for watching this. Let us know what you thought of these two pilots and what other pilots you think we might talk about in the future that would be fun to discuss. The great thing about this show is that we don't have to have seen these shows ever before either, because we're just watching a pilot. Alright, so thank you for watching Pilot Wars. Again, I'm Dan.
I'm Keith.
And we hope you're doing okay.